Welcome to the Healthcare Revolution podcast, where we empower you to take control of your health, restore your trust in the medical system, and achieve lasting wellness. I'm your host, Brad Powell, Doctor of Physical Therapy. I'm the owner of an award-winning clinic here in the Salt Lake Valley. Each episode, we dive into all things rehab prevention, overall health, bringing you expert advice from leaders across various healthcare fields. Please note, while we aim to provide you with the best knowledge and advice, the opinions shared represent those of the experts and are not to be replaced from professional medical advice. Let's revolutionize healthcare and wellness together. Today I have with me my good friend Rick Libert, who is a CEO of 60 plus healthcare clinics here in the Valley and across various states, and he has over 860 employees. And he has a remarkable story about resilience, and that's going to be our main topic today, is building resilience in the healthcare community between patients and providers and the system as a whole. I went with Rick to a conference, and we had a long discussion about a dream that he had. But Rick, I want to welcome you to the podcast. Tell me a little bit about this dream of the ski lake that you had.
Well, thanks, Brad. It's really fun to be here. You have a beautiful clinic.
Thanks.
The ski lake. So we're starting kind of
non-clinical therapy. Yeah, non-healthcare for a minute. Because the reason I want to have this discussion with you is because as I heard your story, I was just blown away by the resilience through it. You had, I would say, hundreds of no's. I don't know if we're in the hundreds, but people told you couldn't do this dream many, many times. And you hit all of these barriers, but yet you kept going. And that's why I was so captivated by this story.
Sure. Yeah, I had plenty of no's, and quite honestly, I was just too dumb to listen. It started with, I'm a slalom water skier, and I was trying to put a slalom course in Utah Lake, and I had a buddy of mine that was also a slalom water skier, and he wasn't into it. And I'm like, dude, don't you want to do this? And he was just not into it. I said, well, what's the deal? He says, well, I want to build a lake. And at first, it sounded like the dumbest idea I'd ever heard. Build a lake. We've got a lake right here. We're looking at Utah Lake.
How long ago was this? How many years?
This was right around 2000, so 25 years ago, something like that. Yeah, right around there. It was 2001. And they said, oh, yeah, people do it all the time, not here in Utah, but yeah, you dig a hole and you fill it full of water, and it's easy. And it went from that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard to that is the coolest idea I've ever heard in about, 15-second window. And that started this, it was almost kind of just a novelty to go out. My wife and I would go look for land to build a lake. And we did that for, 4 or 5 years. And then we stumbled upon a piece of land.
What's interesting is I looked at some generational research, and I think I shared it with you, that the millennial generation, their motto is, I want it now.
Yeah.
Right. You just talked about how you looked for land for almost 4 to 5 years.
Lots of no's in there,
yeah.
By the way. Yeah. There are lots
of
no's.
Just looking for the actual space to do it. Sure. And then I can imagine how many no's along the way.
Well, yeah. And of course, I'm looking for land and I have no money to buy land.
I mean,
so it almost was.
That's another no.
It was almost just kind of a thing we would do.
Yeah.
But then, long story short, after a lot of no's, I called on a piece of land and it was a no, but the guy that answered said, well, what are you looking for? And I told him, because what I was calling, I didn't realize it was huge tract of land.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I got a piece of land like that. And long story short, I met him out there as an old cowboy, and he said, oh yeah, this is, you can rezone this. And I'm not a developer. I'm a physical therapist.
Mm-hmm.
You can rezone it. You can subdivide it. This is how you're going to do it. And I said, well, it seemed all quite overwhelming to me. And I had to bring power in and, buy water rights and, all this, build a dam. I mean, just all this stuff. And he says, oh yeah, I did it once. It's no big deal. It's the biggest lie anybody's ever told me in my entire life.
He's wanting to sell you the property.
Yeah, so he directs me, just go to Tooele County.
Not that hard.
Planning, zoning, just ask them for, what you need to do to rezone this thing. And I remember going up to the counter and saying, I'm here to find out if I can rezone this particular piece of land. And the first thing the woman on the other side of the counter said to me is, "Are you the developer?" Brad, I literally like stopped and I thought, okay, what's a developer?
Thought that one through.
Yeah. What's a developer? Yes, I'm the developer. And that's where it started. So I was very ill-equipped, but
what I loved about it is you had so many resources along the way. Tell me about what your developer friend told you when you said, "I wanted to build a ski lake out on this property."
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to do this. One of the big drivers was I wanted to do this adaptive water ski program that I was doing on Utah Lake.
Yeah.
And I thought the water was rough, and I wanted to build this lake where the water be smooth and be wheelchair accessible, and the family members could watch it, right there on the shore. Where Utah Lake, you're out in the middle, and I had this kind of like dream, and so it was not financially driven, which by the way is really, really dumb if you're a developer because it's so risky.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a developer; I was a PT, and so
unless the city was asking.
Yeah, exactly, and so I call up Mike Dorch, who's the original developer of Saratoga Springs. And, we moved out there right at the beginning. So I happened to get to know Mike and say, "Hey, Mike, I want to do this thing. I'm going to be a developer, because that's what the lady at the county told me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do this thing. That's, we're going to build these water ski lakes, and we're going to do this adaptive water skiing, but there's going to be houses, and we're going to sell the lots, and that's going to pay for this." And he just goes, "Rick, no, don't do this. No, it's way harder than you think." I go, "Oh, no, Mike, it's going to be great. We're going to do this." And he goes, "Rick, okay, you're not going to make as much money as you think you're going to make." And I went, "Oh, no, Mike, you don't understand. I don't want to make any money. I just want to break even." "Oh my gosh, Rick, please,
what a terrible idea.
Please don't do this. Don't do this." And then I said, "Mike, I'm going to do this. Point me in the right direction." And he said, "Okay, here's the name of my engineer." And I said, "Oh, what do I need an engineer for?" He goes, "Just call this guy." I had to build a dam. The dams are, a big deal. When dams break, they cause a lot of damage and, could be loss of life and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the regulations were designed around a dam that is, quite steep on the lakeside, has a very narrow crest, and then very steep on the backside.
Yeah.
So they're kind of tall and narrow dams. My dam, because of the nature of what I was building, was massive. It was really, really thick.
How long is the ski lake and how wide?
It's just shy of a half mile long, and it's about a football field wide. There's technically 3 lakes, but about a football field wide. There's 2 like that, and then there's one that's not for boats. But it's Cable Lake. It's state governed, and there's regulations in place on how things you have to do when you're holding back a certain volume of water. And I was holding back, a large volume of water, but my dam was not your typical dam because we had really, really flat shorelines. So when the water rolls up on it, it just falls apart. You don't get, backwash. You want really smooth water for this stuff. For sure. So just the nature of this thing, my dam was, really wide. Had it's not a 12-foot crest like the regulations, kind of account for. It had a 60-foot crest.
Yeah.
So really, really wide. And what they were going to require me to do was beyond my budget. It was really expensive because that's what the regulations required. So what I did was I took a piece of graph paper and I drew the dam that the regulations were built around. And then I took 3 pieces of graph paper and taped them together and scaled a cross section of my dam. And I went and met with them and said, "Okay, we've spent tons of money on the soil out there. You guys know what this soil is like. If the regulations are about this narrow dam, my dam's this big fat dam that's just huge. If my dam was built out of sand, how long would it take for a drop of water to get from the lake to the other side of the dam and basically breach the dam?" So, it'd be quick. it would happen rather quickly. So now, what if my dam was concrete, solid concrete? How long would it take for a drop of water to get from the lakeside all the way down to the toe? He goes, oh, 100 years. I mean, really long time. Okay. Is my soil more like sand or more like concrete? And it was like solid clay out there. It's hard as a rock. He's like, it's more like concrete.
He's like, good point. Yeah.
So I was able to not have to put in, some stuff that really wasn't necessary because it was a totally different dam. And gratefully, I was working with folks that recognized that they were, able to think and kind of go, okay, we can make an accommodation here. But it was, the difference between doing the project and not doing the project because I just didn't have the funds.
Yeah. So let's define resilience. How would you define resilience? I love this story because you didn't give up. You find another way. You just keep going. You have this dream. You have this, what you want to accomplish, and you get told no or get told all these barriers, but then you just keep going. How would you define resilience?
I think you just did it. Just keep going, find a way. And how you become resilient, that's a different conversation. But I think resilience is just getting back up.
Yeah.
Everybody gets knocked down, everybody. And it's hard to get back up. I mean, there's times, where haven't got back up very quickly or, certainly I think all of us have quit at certain things, but, resilience is just being willing to get back up and get back in the game.
How have you seen, you've been in the healthcare system a while. You understand a lot of the difficulties that we face. How do you see resilience through the years that you've worked demonstrated in healthcare? And it could be with patients, it could be with providers.
Oh yeah.
How have you seen that demonstrated?
I've seen it over and over and over with patients. You have them. I mean, the patients that seem to just have, it's like nobody has that bad of luck.
Mm-hmm.
And they're back in for the fourth, fifth time, and they're just hanging
different
in there, and they've got a good attitude, and they're optimistic, and quite frankly, they're quite inspiring. I see resilience every year when we do the adaptive water ski program.
Yeah.
When we have skiers come out that are paraplegics and quadriplegics, and they're not giving up. They're back, getting on the water, skiing, and using adaptive equipment. It's so inspiring.
Yeah.
I've seen it on the business side of things where, it can be really just simple things like you've got full day of patients, and patients are coming in, and you've got somebody that calls in sick, and the team rallies together and makes sure that the patients, everybody kind of helps out and make sure all the patients get cared for.
Yeah.
I think there's team resilience.
It's super easy to say another therapist sick, or there's a staff member sick, to say, hey, let's just cancel all those patients, right?
Right.
But those are patients that need care.
100%.
They literally have organized. I mean, I think about my wife right now. She's in PT. She just had a baby 10 weeks ago, and just to organize, we just did it this morning. She went to PT. I got the kids ready. I got my daughter off to school, and then I got all the kids, and I drove up to the clinic where she was at, and then I switched her out and then went to work. Right? All the organization and intricacies that need to happen for people to get to healthcare appointments, right? Yeah. And then all of a sudden we say, oh yeah, let's just cancel it, right? But when you rally as a team in resilience, say, yeah, this is hard stuff, but we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what was done during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
People moved mountains to make sure patients got care. It was really cool.
Yeah, I love it. Tell me about how resilience impacts patient care and the well-being of just healthcare professionals.
Oh, I think it translates. It's really important. You've got patients that are coming in who are struggling with some kind of a physical challenge, whether it's an injury or a disease or a condition of any type. To be a picture, of resilience as the practitioner, that they can feel that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're able to speak from a place of experience where you're a resilient person, that can be very inspiring. I remember when I first started as a physical therapist, a friend of mine and mentor really at the time said, the day I can't talk a patient into getting better is the day I have to stop being a physical therapist. And he wasn't saying that clinical skills aren't very, very important, but he was saying that how we communicate, the feeling we give our patients, that level of confidence is equally as important. Life is hard, period.
Yeah.
On everybody, whether it's, work or it's family or financial or illness or, I mean, the list.
The thing is people, especially my generation, we look at each other and we just think, oh, it's not hard for them. It must be easy for them. Oh, Brad's got his own clinics, it must be easy. But what you're saying, your experience, it's not easy for anyone.
No, life's hard by design. At least my belief system is such that I think life is designed to be hard. And I've yet to meet anybody that had a pain-free life, that it was just easy. It comes in different forms. But yeah, life's hard. And I think resilience is a skill that everybody could benefit from.
Absolutely. Tell us about some common challenges that you see in healthcare and maybe how they've evolved in the time that you've been in the healthcare system. What are things that healthcare workers face that maybe patients would have no idea about?
Oh, I think, just the compliance nature of delivering physical therapy. When I got out of school back in 1996, I don't even think compliance was a thing. Mm-hmm. And now, it's, you have to cross every T, dot every I, and it's an expectation. It's not like, a few people do it and, everybody else. No, it's, you gotta run things properly. And that doesn't always, mesh easily with delivering quality care. The two don't line up all the time, and being able to balance the two. And that's, you have to operate compliantly and you have to deliver quality care.
Yeah. Tell us how insurance has really, maybe knocked you down over the years, and maybe your staff as well. What are things that your staff have to deal with on a regular basis that can kind of hack at the resilience?
Well, I can give you one success story. We had I remember this several years ago, but I was treating a patient that had a adhesive capsulitis of the shoulder, frozen shoulder, and this insurance company wouldn't authorize additional visits. And I scheduled a meeting, brought in lunch to the insurance folks and gave them an in-service on adhesive capsulitis.
How long it takes to get adhesive capsulitis,
and explained, the value of physical therapy in the process, and they were extremely appreciative. And needless to say, we got all the visits we needed to finish that patient's care.
That is huge.
And it was a relationship builder. Yeah. So in the future, there was that trust there, and I could just call them up.
I love your approach there, because as healthcare workers, we always put this blame on insurance companies. What are they doing? Telling us what to do. And I understand the frustration, but what are we doing to improve that? What are we doing to educate that? So I love that example.
Brad, I love that you just brought up, blaming others. We can do that. It's super easy to say, I'm a victim of the insurance company. What am I going to do? Mm-hmm. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. What am I going to do? Yeah. And there's truth to that. Or we can say, it's actually my fault that they denied me because I haven't provided enough education to them. If I provided more education and training, then they wouldn't deny me. And again, I realize that that's a stretch in a lot of cases, but it's way more empowering to have that mindset than to just simply say, it's out of my control.
Yeah. Absolutely. I told one of my students and another PT in our company, we had a big team summit last week, and I was really disappointed by the team's energy. I went to immediate, why is people's energy not high? Right? And it took me 2 days to come to realization that it was me.
100%.
I literally set the tone for the energy for that meeting.
Yeah.
Right. And everything that I did influenced the whole team. And
That's
if we all can look at things in life and we can say, how am I influencing this? Rather than putting the blame on everyone else. Because it's so easy to say, it's their fault.
Yeah.
It's their issue. But if I can turn around on me and say, am I out of the box? Am I thinking right? Am I influencing people in the way that I would want?
So, Brad, tie that back to resilience. You took ownership of the situation. How does that tie back to resilience in your mind?
It's so huge, because the thing is, it allows me to realize that I'm always in control. Because control is really, in my opinion, the definition of resilience. If I feel lack of control, I become no longer resilient, right? But if I have control, if I feel like my life circumstances, I can drive the ship in an analogy, right?
Yep.
I direct this. I am a captain of my life.
Yep.
Then I realize I can direct it wherever I want.
That right there, I think, is the key. Resilience is learned. It is, you're not born with,
agree.
You're not born with it. But if you can start with an attitude of, hey, it's all my fault. The weeds in the lawn are my fault. In your lawn, the weeds in your, just ridiculous, But if you can start with kind of wrapping, I wrap my head around with, everything is basically my fault. Well, then it's in my control too. I'm not being acted upon. And I recognize that there are true victims in the world. But most of the things we're talking about, just adopting that mindset opens up our creative mind to solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. So we looked at these studies across cultures because we wanted to identify how pain perception is different across cultures.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting how people perceive pain differently based on their life circumstances. So we tied it all back to what's called the internal locus of control, which means, do I have control over the things in my world? So the communities that had less control had higher perceived pain.
Interesting.
But the people that had less perceived pain were the ones that were in the communities that they had more control of. What was interesting is Poland, out of all places in the world, had the lowest level of pain, and they associate it with the control aspect.
Interesting.
What was interesting is I think it was around 80% of Poland were Christians. And we don't know if there's a direct correlation there, but those people felt like they could direct their life in a more important way, that they could lead with passion and they could lead with purpose.
I was going to say, maybe it was they found purpose in the pain, and they could explain it somehow.
Yeah.
What you're reminding me of is patience. The kind of stereotypical, let's just say, neck injury patient that came from a car accident. They got hit. It wasn't their fault. They were sitting at the stoplight and they got rear-ended, and now their car is messed up and their neck's messed up and they're having trouble at work and all this stuff. And you feel, just that, your world that you thought you were in control of just got violated. You lose control. And then you got the bull rider, that has a neck that's just an absolute mess, but is okay with it because it's, it's all happened in a circumstance that he wanted to be in, and it's his passion, and
he's getting back out there.
And it's so much of it, I think you're right, is our perception of the control that we have of the situation.
Absolutely.
And if we can even trick ourselves to think we have more control than we really do, we can tap into that creative mind and find resilient answers that keep us going.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, as we're talking about this, I'm thinking about all these patients that have come to me and said, I just feel like I can't get the care that I need, that the system is limiting me, or I'm getting, barriers along the way, or I'm just done with being hurt. What advice would you give to those people that are in that circumstance, these patients?
That's a really good question. First of all, I've never walked in their shoes, so it's really hard to give advice to anybody. I would say that we never know enough to be pessimistic. And that's just kind of that's my favorite saying, because I say it to myself. I remind myself of that, constantly because
Explain what that means to me.
So we never know enough to feel like there isn't hope. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. We don't know, what good fortune is right around the corner. When we're in the middle of winter, it feels like winter is going to last all year long.
Yeah.
But spring comes, it comes, and it may not come in the exact form that we expect it or want it to, but in my experience, both in watching others and in my own life, it kind of comes in waves, and you have challenges, and then you get a little reprieve where there's a break in the clouds and the sun pokes through.
Yeah.
When it's raining, it feels like it's going to rain forever, and then the sun pokes through. So yeah.
What a beautiful analogy, because that's just a cycle. We all go through that cycle where it just feels like it's pounding and it's just not stopping.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it feels light.
Yeah.
And it gives you hope. And then you develop this faith for the future, and not necessarily in a religious standpoint, but it's just this pattern of recognition and saying, oh man, there is light, and there's going to be light again.
So I'm going to go back to your 30 broken bones or whatever. 30 something. Probably the first time you broke a bone, it was like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to be the same?
Yeah.
And the 25th time you broke a bone, you had built some resilience. You kind of knew the deal, and you knew, what it was going to take and how hard you were going to have to work. And I think that's the case when, with kind of life and whether it's in healthcare or whatever the challenges are. Resilience is a learned skill. You get a challenge. You come out of school. Let's just take the student for example. You come out of school and you get your first job, and it's like, oh my goodness, this is way harder than I thought. I went to school for this. This is a lot harder than I
don't even know what I'm doing.
This is way harder than I thought. These days are longer than I thought.
Yeah.
And then, you build up a little bit of stamina and resilience. It's just like going out and building a muscle or building endurance to go running. And then what happens? Opens up and pours on you somehow. Yeah. Whatever it is, maybe it's a problem with the patient.
You feel like you can't get better.
Yeah. You've got a patient that's really hard. As hard as, you've tried to help the patient, they're really just difficult personality wise. And then they challenge you in your communication skills and interpersonal skills. And you can, it's not my fault. This person's just mean. Or you can say, well, I just don't have the skills to communicate with this patient quite yet.
And
you find them. You talk with folks, and you read, and you do whatever you need to do. You get and you learn. And you know what? You might fail on that patient, but if you own it,
what I learned the most from is the patients that I couldn't help.
Totally.
Like I can just list them. I can actually see their faces, because that's what drove me to learn more.
Yes.
Because I look back and I'm like, I wish I could have had that patient again.
Yeah.
Because now I know what I didn't know.
So much of it is mindset. And this is another thing, it's said that we never know enough to be pessimistic. That's something I reminded myself of weekly. Another thing that I just constantly, and I'm better at it now, but earlier in my career, when things are good, the best we can be is good.
Yeah.
When things are good, the best we can be is good. It's not until things go bad that we have an opportunity to be great. That's what all these superhero movies are about, right? You don't need a superhero when things are good.
Mm-hmm.
Who needs a superhero? But when things go bad, that's where the opportunities lie. It takes some real self-awareness and mental fortitude to not just go, oh my goodness, things are bad. This is awful. Over the years, I've kind of trained myself, and I still have to catch myself when things go bad. I go, this is a great opportunity.
I love that.
And
we're going to shift gears a little bit with here, because I was in a meeting with you once, and we were talking about students and burnout. And
Yeah.
I remember I commented and I said, there's nothing that burns me out more than talking about burnout.
Yeah.
And the reason, and I realize that burnout exists, and I'm not like unvalidating that by all
Sure.
means, but I believe in what you focus on expands. And if I focus on burnout, it immediately starts burning me out.
Yeah.
I acknowledge it.
Yeah.
But then I want to focus on resilience. I want to
Yeah.
focus on what can I do to improve and see the future as brightness rather than darkness.
That's right.
And we were talking to these students and to these professors. What recommendations would you give students that have had these conversations about burnout? You know, they're going into the best profession in the world.
Sure.
Right? What advice would you give them?
Well, first of all, I'd validate that it's hard. You know, learning new things is hard.
Is it hard just for healthcare workers?
It's hard for everybody. I mean, I'm sure it's hard for accountants. I'm sure it's hard I can tell you right now, my son-in-law has a concrete company. Super hard, super hard for him, when he got into concrete. Now he's got a successful company, but talk about a resilient guy. It's hard. And so pain is normal. It's super normal to feel pain and stress. And I don't think that should be mistaken as a bad thing. We know this as physical therapists that, to build the body, we have to go out of balance. If we just stay in homeostasis the whole time, the body doesn't get stronger. Yeah. You have to push it. Mm-hmm. And it's no different with our stress capacity. And so it's normal. And then as we normalize and we're like, oh, I can handle a 40-hour work week. I might even be able to handle a little more than that. Or I can handle, these more difficult patients. Well, it's time then to get out of your comfort zone again.
I love it.
And if you do that, then you can avoid comfort or a burnout, but you have to always be pushing.
Absolutely. What would you like to see resilience-wise in the healthcare community, whether it's with patients, providers, insurances? What would you like to see in their healthcare community?
Oh, man, I think just more self-awareness of, it's okay, and yeah, it's hard and that's okay. And yeah, you failed and that's okay. Failing's okay. It's just, you got to get back up. I'd like to see less perfectionism. I think perfectionism leads to burnout.
100%.
You're only perfect for a moment. And this is a journey. A good solid B gets the job done almost every time. There's the rare circumstance we need an A+, super rare.
Yeah.
I think going for an A+ every time leads to burnout.
I 100% agree with that. I mentor a lot of new grads, and that is one thing I see. They want to be an expert clinician overnight. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to go back to the drawing board and go back and study. All those things are okay. But one of the interesting things, we send out a survey, an anonymous survey for employees to get some feedback from their colleagues. And it's 18 questions. And one of the ones I always see low on almost every single team member, we have 28 employees, is self-awareness. And I think that just chronically across society, self-awareness is something that we can all work on.
Totally. It's hard.
What am I doing to influence
I can tell you all the things that are wrong with you, but
yeah, like the minute you turn it back on you, it's like,
hard.
okay, I got to reflect myself and make some changes here.
Just like learning the skills of physical therapy, we have to learn the skills of, being self-aware and resilience and all these just communication skills. And it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
And if we're not good at being self-aware, welcome to the club. Yeah, let's work on it.
Yeah. I just want to end with, we went fishing down at your lake the other day. I was so inspired by seeing that and knowing the story and the struggles that you've had. It was just, we were fishing on this lake, and I remember I sitting there fishing, and you taught me how to fly fish for the first time, and I wasn't catching any. And everyone else that was with us was catching fish. And I was like, Rick, what am I doing wrong? And I remember you came over, and I was a little frustrated, going back to resilience here. And I said, Rick, what am I doing wrong? And you said, reel it in. Let's see what you got there. And I reel it in, and sure enough, there's no hook. And
sometimes we just need to start with the basics.
Yeah, I mean, I was a lot better fisherman when I had a hook.
You were. You caught fish. I think you caught as many fish as anybody else once you had a hook.
Yeah,
it's just the little things.
Sometimes we just get stuck.
Yeah.
And we need some mentorship. We need someone to give us a hand up. And that's what this world's all about. This year in our company, we're focusing on bucket lists. And I realized when I did this bucket list with my kids this year, people want to help you reach your goals. There were so many times I was just talking to other people about this bucket list with my kids.
Yeah.
And Mark was one of them. And I said, dude, my kids really want to go to Bear Lake.
Yeah.
And Mark was like, here, take my keys. I got a cabin in Bear Lake, right? And I told my kids, I'm like, I don't know if we can do that, right?
Yeah.
And how dare me, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's find a way. We might not have the money to go up to Bear Lake to do that, but someone offered us to go allow us to stay in their cabin, right?
Yep.
And it's just an incredible story about we all want to help each other, and
Truly.
give each other a leg up.
Truly. Yeah. Especially in this profession. We're a helping profession. We love to see people succeed. I love seeing you succeed. This is cool.
Thanks.
You're doing a great job.
Well, I appreciate it. I just want to last comment on your lake. The future is bright. Like when I looked at that lake, I just thought all the struggles that you went through was worth it. Right. And I don't know if it was worth it for you. It sounds
No. It's worth it. There was many years where I'm like, that was the dummest thing.
How do you feel when you get all those adaptive ski people out on the lake?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, they're the two, we do 2 a year, and they're my 2 favorite days on the lake of the year. I mean, yeah, it's really cool.
It's got to be so
they're
rewarding.
So inspiring. You're just in awe with, what they're doing and accomplishing with, significantly less advantage as most of us, and they're making it happen.
Yeah, and they're some of the most resilient humans too.
So resilient.
I love it. Well, I love the story about the lake. I love what you bring to healthcare and how you're leading from the front. You're teaching your employees, you're teaching these organizations and all healthcare workers. You're a true advocate for resilience. And we appreciate what you do for the community.
Well, thank you. Likewise, we're in an amazing profession, and there's so much blue sky. There's so much we can do to help people, and I couldn't be more excited about the future.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Rick. We appreciate you.
Thank you.